I want to switch now because the biggest shock I got on care, which is one of the reasons that I actually changed my career path. I was doing work internationally in various parts of the world. I changed my career path. One, because I had to be home. I had to be in Canada with my parents. And two, because the shock that I got because of the costs of care were absolutely amazing. They were shocking. And I decided that at this point in time, somebody had to address this issue in Canada, and I decided to write the first book on it because of this kind of thing. Now, this is a little convoluted, but basically all this is telling you, ladies and gentlemen, is that the costs of care you're going to incur are going to depend on the hours you need care, and that will grow. It will also depend on the location. Where are you going to receive that care? Are you going to downsize and move to a retirement community? But if you do that, of course, remember, that does not give you the care. That just gives you a smaller area to live, all right? And in the intensity of the need. So these all drive the costs of care. And care costs right now have an inflation rate of 5% a year. So they're going up by 5%. So these are the costs. I'd like to show you what that translates into, though. This is a timeline, it's not for scale, obviously, of the 16 years that I spent in care years, on care years journeys with all of my loved ones, all right? What I want to show you here is just point out a couple of things. First of all, I want to point out that life goes on. You know, a woman phoned me not so long ago, and she was in tears, and she said, Patty, I just want everything else to stop until I could do the care with my mother. Unfortunately, life doesn't stop. During the 16 years, I was married, I was divorced, I changed my career, I was remarried, I was widowed, and I lost both my parents. Within the 16 years, life continues on. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out, is that things don't come to a halt just because you've entered this new country called Healthcare Canada and you're going to all of a sudden have to do some caregiving for your spouse, or someone's going to have to do some caregiving because of you. All right, so that's the first. The second thing I want to point out are those two lines that are colored. The first pink line, my parents were what was considered in the 60s ordinary income parents. Ended up being low income because of the costs of care, but that's their savings once they retired. That's their savings. Mine is the blue line. That's one of my RSP funds going up, climbing. So my working years, as you can see, it's climbing. They're in their gentle retirement years, that's fine. But once my dad fell, bang, things started to go off track. Things started to go off track. And what happened was, take a look at my mother's pink line. It started to go down the minute he needed care. But look where it fell off the cliff. It fell off the cliff there because what we didn't anticipate is they both need care, but in different locations. So my dad ended up in a private pay nursing home, and my mother ended up with 24/7 live-in care at home. We had dual costs. At that point in time, we have providers of 3 resorts in Canada. The provider of dollars of first resort is the person themselves that needs the care, that family. The second resort is the child. There's an obligation at that point. Now, none of us need an obligation to tell us to help out, but it is there, all right? And the provider of third resort is the government. Now, if you take a look, the minute my mother needed care, that blue line starts to drop off the cliff too for me, and it continues along. Not to mention that if one of these things like divorce happens in the middle of these kinds of things, your line drops off for sure, because now you're going from a 2-income in a household to running a household on 1 and putting out costs of care. Right? So this is the type of thing that happens along here, and you can see all the kinds of plateauing. My last care year's journey ended just this year with my mother-in-law passing away, and only now you see it start to climb. So these are the financial impacts that these kinds of things happen. I want you to notice, though, that in there I've got something called subsidization. I'll tell you, I became an absolute whiz at going after everything I could possibly do to help up with my parents because of the kinds of costs that were happening. We were spending, at a low-income level, we were spending over $7,000 a month for my mother for live-in care and to run her own house, etc., and several thousand for my father in a private nursing home until he was on, quote, the list. We don't have lists like that anymore. But at that point in time, the average the average output for care and all the costs was over $127,000. So these become very large numbers. I'd like to mention right now, though, a little bit about subsidization. I'm assuming you know a little bit about it. I'm assuming that you don't give a darn about the rest of it because it may not apply, but I think you should know if you're talking to neighbors, etc. Subsidization in Canada, all of subsidization, every province, every territory has an income test. We do not test for assets except in Newfoundland and Labrador now. And that's only on their liquid assets. So in other words, not their main home. So keeping in mind, to get subsidization or assistance from the government, you can have any level of income and still get subsidization. In BC, it's on remaining annual income. Every province and territory has a different formula. What that says is that you could own a chateau in Whistler, you can own a cottage on the lakes in Ontario, you could own a yacht, you could own several rental properties, but if your income gets down to $30,000 or below, or even if it's at $60,000, it doesn't matter because $30,000 is the mark here, you will be eligible for subsidized care in Canada because it's not going to test your assets at all unless you live in Newfoundland, Labrador. Now you might be thinking, perhaps we should switch this around. Maybe we should have asset testing. That's not going to happen. Some of the eastern provinces had asset testing, and I was there during one of the elections, and they all went back to income testing only, no assets. Of course, you're going to tell me that I've worked all my life to get this home and this rental property and this type of lifestyle, and now you're going to basically be biased against me on it? I don't think that's going to sell. It's a political hot potato. So that's how it works. This is how the dollars break out if you're just looking at nursing homes. Just government-funded nursing homes in Canada. This is where we're at as of November. You can take a look at British Columbia's rate. So the highest you will pay, no matter what your income, the highest you would ever pay is about $2,900 if you've got subsidized care. Now that's in a government-funded, let's use the word nursing home, they're called complex care residences now, but that's the highest you'd pay. So government-funded nursing homes, those are the rates all across Canada, and each government, because it's a provincial government discretion, each government gets to set the rules and regulations for this. So I wanted to mention at the bottom, this is quite a big business. Now, when I mean a residential care here, it has to be a 4-bed or higher. We're not talking about the lodges that have 2 beds for care. We're talking the 4-bed and higher, and these are government-funded. These are government-funded ones right now. So taking a look, this is big business. Government-funded nursing home residents last year brought in $17.1 billion. Their cost outlay was $17 billion though. 0.07% profit margin. That's why you don't find private companies building nursing homes. You find private companies building assisted living, retirement communities, not nursing homes. There's no profit margin, but it is a big business. It's equivalent to over 250,000 jobs. So these are all there. All of this, by the way, is on my website. If you ever want to get good information, it's certainly available to you. So that's subsidization in a nutshell.